The auctioneer's gavel cracked like a gunshot through the dusty square of Sierra City, California, and Vincent Ormond knew he was about to make the worst mistake of his life. But loneliness had a way of driving a man to desperate measures in the summer of 1872. He had ridden into town with $30 in his pocket and a simple plan to hire a cook for his ranch 20 miles north. But the moment he saw Lily Reeves standing on that platform with her swollen belly protruding beneath a threadbare dress and tears streaming down her face, something shifted in his chest like tectonic plates rearranging the landscape of his heart. "Gentlemen, we have here a fine specimen of womanhood, though I'll be honest with you all, she comes with complications," the auctioneer bellowed, his voice carrying across the crowd of rough men who had gathered in the late afternoon heat. "This here girl is carrying twins, doctor says, and she owes the Riverside Hotel $40 for room and board. Her husband died 3 months back in a mining accident up in the mountains, left her with nothing but debts and babies on the way. Whoever takes her gets a worker once she recovers from childbirth, and the debt gets settled. Do I hear $10? Vincent felt his jaw clench at the way the man spoke about Lily as though she were livestock. Her face was turned down, long brown hair falling forward to hide her expression, but he could see her hands trembling where they clutched the fabric of her dress. She could not have been more than 22 years old, perhaps younger, and the desperation radiating from her was palpable even from where he stood at the back of the crowd. $10, a gruff voice called out, and Vincent recognized Thomas Milligan, a rancher known for working his employees half to death and paying them even less. $10. Do I hear 15? The auctioneer continued, Vincent's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He had not come here for this. He had come for supplies and maybe to find a hired hand who could cook decent meals and help with the endless chores that came with running a cattle ranch alone. He was 28 years old and had been managing his land by himself for 3 years since his father passed, and the solitude had worn him down to the bone. But buying a pregnant woman at auction was not what he had planned, and yet he found himself unable to walk away. $15. Another voice rang out. Lily's head lifted slightly, and for just a moment Vincent caught sight of her face. She had delicate features marked by exhaustion and fear, green eyes that held an ocean of sorrow, and in that instant he saw not a transaction but a human being in desperate need of rescue. $20, Vincent heard himself say, his voice carrying clearly across the square. Heads turned to look at him, and he felt the weight of judgment from men who knew him as the quiet rancher who kept to himself. The auctioneer's eyebrows raised with interest. $20 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 25? Thomas Milligan turned to size Vincent up, his weathered face twisted with calculation. 25, he countered. Vincent's heart hammered against his ribs. He thought of his modest savings, the repairs his barn needed, the new breeding stock he had planned to purchase in the fall. Then he looked at Lily again and saw her eyes widen with fear as she recognized Milligan, and that made his decision for him. $35, Vincent called out firmly. That is my final offer, the crowd murmured with surprise. $35 was more than most men earned in 2 months of hard labor. The auctioneer grinned widely, clearly pleased with the turn of events. $35. Do I hear 40? He paused, looking around. Thomas Milligan scowled but shook his head and turned away, clearly unwilling to go higher for a woman who would not be able to work for months. Going once, going twice, sold to Vincent Ormond for $35. The gavel came down again, and Vincent felt the reality of what he had just done settle over him like a heavy blanket. He made his way through the crowd, pulling the money from his pocket with fingers that did not quite feel like his own. The auctioneer counted the bills carefully while a deputy sheriff stood nearby to witness the transaction. "Sign here," the auctioneer said, pushing a document forward. "You are responsible for her debts, and she is bound to work for you for a period of no less than 2 years to repay the cost of purchase plus her hotel debt. After that, she is free to go or renegotiate terms." Vincent signed his name with a pen that scratched across the rough paper, each letter feeling like a chain he was wrapping around both their futures. Then he turned to face Lily, who stood trembling on the platform, her hands now protectively cradling her belly. "Come on down," he said quietly, offering his hand to help her down the steps. "I will not hurt you." She looked at his hand for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for some sign of his intentions. Finally, she placed her small, work-roughened hand in his, and he steadied her as she descended carefully. Up close, he could see that she was exhausted beyond measure, dark circles under her eyes, her skin pale despite the California sun. "Thank you," she whispered, so softly he almost missed it. "Do you have belongings to collect?" Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice gentle. "Just a small bag at the hotel. They would not let me take it until the debt was settled. We will get it now, then head to my ranch. It is about 20 miles north of here." "Do you think you can manage the ride in a wagon?" She nodded, though he could see the weariness in every line of her body. They walked together through the dispersing crowd, and Vincent was acutely aware of the stares following them. He had never been one for town gossip, but he knew that by tomorrow morning, everyone within 50 miles would be talking about how Vincent Ormond had paid $35 for a pregnant widow at auction. At the Riverside Hotel, a stern-faced woman handed over Lily's bag without ceremony once Vincent showed her the settlement papers. The bag was pitifully small, containing what appeared to be little more than a change of clothes and a few personal items. Vincent took it from Lily and carried it to where his wagon waited on the street, hitched to 2 sturdy horses. He helped Lily up onto the bench seat, noting how light she felt despite her pregnancy, as though she had not been eating properly for some time. Once she was settled, he climbed up beside her and took the reins, guiding the horses out of town and onto the dusty road that led north into the rolling hills. For the first few miles, neither of them spoke. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The landscape around them was typical of the Sierra Nevada foothills during summer, with dry golden grass covering the hillsides and clusters of oak trees providing occasional shade. Vincent glanced sideways at Lily several times, trying to gauge her condition, but she sat with her eyes fixed straight ahead, one hand never leaving her belly. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I should tell you what to expect at the ranch. It is just me there. I raise cattle, have about 200 head spread across 600 acres. The house is nothing fancy, but it is solid and weatherproof. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room. You will have your own room, of course. I will not intrude on your privacy." She turned to look at him then, surprise evident in her expression. "You are giving me my own room, of course. What did you think?" The question came out before he considered how it might sound. "I thought," she paused, her voice dropping lower, "I thought you bought me for other purposes." That is what most men who bid on women at auction want. Vincent felt heat rise in his face, part anger at the situation that had forced her to such an auction, and part shame that she had to consider such things. "I bought you because you needed help, and I need help running the ranch. Nothing more. I will not force myself on you or make demands beyond honest work, and even that not until after you have recovered from childbirth. You have my word on that, for whatever it is worth." Lily studied his face for a long moment, and he kept his eyes on the road, giving her time to take his measure. "Why did you bid so much?" she asked finally. "You could have hired a man for less, someone who could work immediately." "I do not rightly know," Vincent admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "I saw you standing there, and I could not stomach the thought of Milligan taking you. He is known for being cruel to those who work for him. And maybe," he hesitated, then continued, "maybe I understand something about loneliness and needing help when the world seems set against you." She was quiet again after that, but something in her posture softened slightly. The wagon rolled on through the gathering dusk, and Vincent watched the familiar landmarks pass by. They crossed a wooden bridge over a shallow creek, climbed a long hill that gave a view of the valley below, and finally turned onto the narrow track that led to his property. The ranch house came into view as the last light was fading from the sky. It was a modest structure of wood and stone, built by his father 20 years earlier when this land was even wilder than it was now. A barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings and corrals. The property looked lonely in the twilight, and Vincent saw it suddenly through Lily's eyes, realizing how isolated it must seem to someone who had just been bought like property and brought to a stranger's home. He pulled the wagon up in front of the house and set the brake before climbing down and coming around to help Lily descend. She moved slowly, clearly stiff from the journey, and he could see her face tighten with discomfort. "When are the babies due?" he asked as he retrieved her bag and led her toward the house. The doctor thought perhaps another 6 weeks, maybe 8. It is hard to be certain. Vincent opened the door and lit a lamp that stood on a table just inside. The warm glow revealed a clean but sparse interior. The main room held a stone fireplace, a worn sofa, a table with 4 chairs, and little else in the way of decoration. He led her down a short hallway to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "This will be yours," he said, setting her bag on the simple bed. The room contained the bed, a small dresser, and a chair by the window. "I know it is not much, but the mattress is good, and you will have privacy. The door has a lock on the inside if that makes you feel more secure." Lily looked around the room, and to his surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "It is more than I have had in months. After my husband died, I could not afford to keep our cabin. I have been staying in a shared room at the hotel with 3 other women, working in the kitchen to try to pay down the debt, but it kept growing faster than I could work it off. I thought," her voice broke, "I thought I would end up in a much worse situation than this." Vincent felt something crack open in his chest at her words. "You are safe here. I give you my word. Now you must be hungry. Let me see what I can put together for supper." He left her to settle in and returned to the kitchen, where he found the remains of a loaf of bread he had baked 3 days earlier, some dried beef, a few eggs from his chickens, and some canned vegetables. It was not much, but he fried up the eggs and beef, warmed the vegetables, and cut thick slices of bread. By the time Lily emerged from her room, looking slightly more composed after washing her face in the basin he had provided, he had a simple meal laid out on the table. They ate mostly in silence, but Vincent noticed that Lily ate hungrily, finishing everything on her plate and accepting seconds when he offered. She looked exhausted by the time they finished, her eyelids drooping with fatigue. "You should rest," Vincent said, standing to clear the plates. "Tomorrow will be time enough to talk about arrangements and what you will do once you are recovered. For now, just sleep." "Thank you," Lily said again, rising carefully from her chair. "Vincent, that is your name, right?" he nodded. "Thank you for not being the monster I feared you would be." She disappeared into her room, and Vincent heard the soft click of the lock engaging. He did not blame her for that. Trust would have to be earned, and he had plenty of time to prove that his intentions were honorable. He cleaned up the kitchen, banked the fire in the stove, and retired to his own room, where he lay awake for a long time, wondering what on earth he had gotten himself into. The next morning, Vincent woke before dawn, as was his habit, and went about his usual chores. He fed the horses, milked the 2 cows, collected eggs from the chicken coop, and checked on the cattle in the near pastures. The work was familiar and soothing, giving him time to think about how drastically his life had changed in the span of a single day. When he returned to the house around 7 o'clock, he found Lily already awake in the kitchen, looking uncertainly at the stove. She had changed into a slightly less worn dress, though it was still faded and patched in several places, and she had braided her long hair back from her face. "I was trying to figure out how to make coffee without getting in your way," she said, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "You are not in my way. Here, let me show you where things are." Vincent walked her through the kitchen, showing her where he kept the coffee, the flour, the sugar, and other staples. "Please help yourself to whatever you need. You are not a guest here, Lily. This is your home now, at least for the next 2 years. They made coffee together, an oddly domestic scene, and Vincent fried more eggs and bacon for breakfast. As they ate, he tried to think of how to approach the conversation they needed to have. "I have been thinking about what work you might do once you are recovered from having the babies," he began carefully. "I am not going to pretend I do not need help. Running this place alone has been difficult, but I want you to understand that I will not work you into the ground. Cooking, keeping the house, perhaps tending a garden and helping with the chickens, that sort of thing. The heavy ranch work, I will continue to handle myself." Lily looked down at her plate. "And the babies, I know they will make things more difficult. Most men would not want the complication of twin infants in their house." "We will manage," Vincent said with more confidence than he felt. "There is an older woman, Mrs. Patterson, who lives about 5 miles east of here. She helped my mother when I was born and has delivered half the babies in this county. I will ride over today and ask her to check on you, make sure everything is progressing as it should. When the time comes, she will help with the delivery. I can pay you back," Lily said quietly, "for the $35 and for the hotel debt. It will take time, but I will work hard, I promise." Vincent shook his head. "The debt is settled, I bought it, so it is mine to worry about, not yours. You do not owe me anything beyond honest work when you are able, and right now, you are not able, so you owe me nothing at all." She looked at him with those searching green eyes, and he could see her trying to understand him, to fit him into some category that made sense in her experience. He had a feeling he did not fit any of the molds she expected. "I should tell you about my husband," she said suddenly. "About what happened. Only if you want to. His name was Samuel. We married 2 years ago when I was 19 and he was 24. He was a good man, kind to me, but he had dreams of striking it rich in the gold fields. We came out here from Missouri, and he spent months up in the mountains, panning and digging. He would come back to town every few weeks, always certain that the next trip would be the one where he found the mother lode." Her voice grew thick with emotion. 3 months ago, there was a collapse in one of the tunnels. 5 men died, including Samuel. By then, I was already pregnant, though we had not known it would be twins until later. "I am sorry," Vincent said, and he meant it. "I tried to make it work in town, taking whatever jobs I could find, but nobody wants to hire a pregnant woman. The debt just kept growing, and then the hotel owner said he would have to sell my labor contract to cover what I owed. I thought I would end up in a brothel or worse." She met his eyes. "So you see, even though I am here because you bought me, I am grateful it was you and not someone else." Vincent felt the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on his shoulders. "You have been through hell, and I will do everything I can to make sure you have a chance to build a real life here, one where you and your children are safe." They finished breakfast, and Vincent rode out to find Mrs. Patterson, leaving Lily with instructions to rest and not overdo anything. The older woman was hanging laundry when he arrived, and she listened to his story with raised eyebrows but without judgment. "So you bought yourself a pregnant wife at auction," she said when he finished. "She is not my wife, just someone who works for me," Vincent corrected quickly. Mrs. Patterson gave him a knowing look. "Uh-huh. Well, bring her by tomorrow and I will have a look at her." Twin births can be complicated, especially for a young woman who has been under as much stress as you describe. She will need good food, rest, and someone to keep an eye on her as the time gets closer. "I will bring her tomorrow," Vincent promised. Over the next few days, a routine began to develop. Lily would wake early, and despite Vincent's protests, she insisted on making breakfast and tidying the house. She moved slowly, her pregnancy making every task more difficult, but she seemed to need the activity. Vincent tried to spend more time around the house than usual, worried about leaving her alone for too long, though he still had to tend to the ranch work that demanded his attention. Mrs. Patterson examined Lily and declared that while she was undernourished and exhausted, both she and the babies seemed healthy enough. She gave strict instructions about diet and rest, and Vincent found himself riding into Sierra City more frequently than usual to buy fresh vegetables, milk, and other supplies that Mrs. Patterson insisted were necessary. As the days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to happen. The awkwardness between Vincent and Lily started to fade, replaced by a tentative friendship built on shared meals and evening conversations. Vincent learned that Lily had been raised on a farm in Missouri, the eldest of 6 children, and that she knew how to preserve food and manage a household with impressive efficiency. She had a quiet sense of humor that emerged gradually, and sometimes he could make her laugh with stories about the mishaps that came with ranching alone. For her part, Lily learned that Vincent was far more educated than the typical cowboy, having been taught to read by his mother, who had been a schoolteacher before marrying his father. He had a small collection of books that he treasured, and he was surprised when Lily asked if she could read them. They began spending evenings together in the sitting room, Lily reading aloud while Vincent mended tack or sharpened tools, the sound of her voice filling the lonely house with warmth. One evening, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Lily looked up from the book she was reading and studied Vincent for a long moment. He felt her gaze and looked up from the bridle he was working on. "What is it?" he asked. "I was just thinking that I have been here almost a month, and you have been nothing but kind. You have not made a single improper advance. You have spent money you probably could not afford on food and supplies for me, and you have treated me like a person rather than property. I want you to know that I see it and I am grateful." Vincent felt heat rise in his face. "You do not need to thank me for basic decency, but I do, because it is not as common as it should be." She paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" he nodded, setting down the bridle. "Why are you alone out here? A man like you with property and education you could have married, had a family. Why did you not?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, considering how to answer. "My father died 3 years ago and my mother passed when I was 15. After my father was gone, I threw myself into keeping this place running, and I suppose I just never made time for courting. The loneliness crept up on me gradually, until one day I woke up and realized I was talking to the horses more than to people. I went into town that day thinking I would hire help, and instead I found you. Do you regret it?" she asked softly. He met her eyes. "No, not even a little bit." Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that went deeper than employer and employee. deeper than rescuer and rescued. Vincent felt it like an electric current, and from the way Lily's expression shifted, he thought she felt it too. But neither of them said anything more, and after a moment she returned to reading, though he noticed her voice was slightly unsteady. The next morning, Vincent woke to the sound of Lily moving around in the kitchen earlier than usual. When he emerged from his room, he found her making a more elaborate breakfast than usual, with biscuits baking in the oven and bacon sizzling in a pan. "You are up early," he observed. "I could not sleep. The babies were active all night, kicking and moving." She placed a hand on her belly, and Vincent saw the clear outline of a small foot pressing against her dress from the inside. "I think they are running out of room in there." How much longer did Mrs. Patterson think? "She said probably another 3 or 4 weeks, but she warned me that twins sometimes come early." Lily turned back to the stove, flipping the bacon. "Vincent, can I ask you for something?" "Of course. Would you teach me to ride a horse?" "Not now, obviously, but after the babies are born and I have recovered. I have never learned, and I feel so isolated here, knowing that I could not go anywhere if I needed to." "I will teach you," Vincent promised. "And I will teach your children too when they are old enough. Every person living out here should know how to ride." They ate breakfast together, falling into the comfortable rhythm they had developed. After the meal, Vincent headed out to work on repairing a section of fence that had been damaged by a fallen tree. He was absorbed in the task when he heard a horse approaching at a fast pace. Looking up, he saw his nearest neighbor, Frank Morrison, riding toward him. "Vincent," Frank called out as he pulled his horse to a stop. "Heard some interesting news in town yesterday." "Word is you bought a woman at auction." Vincent straightened, immediately defensive. "News travels fast." "Always does. Look, I am not here to judge. Just wanted to make sure everything is all right. Some of the men in town are talking, saying it is not proper, a single man and a pregnant woman living alone out here." "Let them talk," Vincent said flatly. "Lily needed help, I needed help, and the arrangement is completely respectable. She has her own room, and I have not laid a hand on her except to help her in and out of the wagon." Frank raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I believe you, Vincent. I know you are a good man. But you should know that Thomas Milligan has been stirring up trouble, saying he should have won the auction, claiming you tricked him somehow. He is a mean drunk, and I would not put it past him to cause problems." Vincent felt a chill run down his spine. "Thanks for the warning. I will keep an eye out." Frank nodded and rode off, leaving Vincent with a new worry to add to his growing list. He finished the fence repair and headed back to the house, where he found Lily sitting on the porch with a basket of mending. The afternoon sun highlighted the copper tones in her brown hair, and she looked peaceful in a way she had not when she first arrived. "Everything all right?" she asked, noticing his expression. He told her about Frank's visit and Milligan's threats. Her face paled and her hand went protectively to her belly. "What will we do if he comes here?" "I will handle it," Vincent said firmly. "But I want you to stay close to the house from now on, and if anyone comes around when I am out working, you lock the doors and do not open them for anyone but me or Mrs. Patterson. Understand?" She nodded, fear evident in her eyes, and Vincent cursed himself for bringing that fear back when she had just started to relax. That night, he loaded his rifle and placed it by the door, and he lay awake for hours, listening to every sound outside, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake by drawing attention to them. But the weeks passed without incident, and gradually the tension eased. Summer deepened into its hottest phase, and the ranch work became more demanding. Vincent found himself working from before dawn until after dusk, coming home exhausted and dusty. Each evening, Lily would have dinner waiting, simple but satisfying meals, and she always had cold water drawn from the well for him to wash up. Her belly grew enormous, and she moved with increasing difficulty. Mrs. Patterson visited weekly now, monitoring the pregnancy closely. One afternoon in early August, about 7 weeks after Lily had arrived at the ranch, Vincent returned from moving cattle to find Mrs. Patterson's wagon parked outside the house. He hurried inside, his heart pounding with sudden fear. Mrs. Patterson met him in the main room, her expression serious but calm. "The babies have dropped," she said without preamble. "It could be today, could be a week from now, but it will be soon. I am going to stay here for the next few days just to be safe. Twin births can go wrong quickly, and Lily is going to need all the help we can give her." Vincent nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. "What do you need me to do?" "Boil water, lots of it. Gather all the clean linens we have. Make sure we have plenty of lamp oil because these things often happen at night. And stay close. She's going to need you." "Need me? I am not. This is women's work, is it not?" Mrs. Patterson gave him a stern look. "You bought her, you brought her here, and whether you intended it or not, you have become the most important person in her life right now. She is terrified, Vincent, and she trusts you. So yes, she is going to need you." As if summoned by their conversation, Lily appeared in the doorway to her room, one hand braced against the frame, the other supporting her belly. Her face was flushed and she was breathing heavily. "I think," she gasped, "I think it is starting. I have been having pains for the last hour, getting closer together." Mrs. Patterson sprang into action, guiding Lily back to her bed while issuing orders to Vincent. He found himself running back and forth, fetching water, linens, anything Mrs. Patterson called for. The afternoon stretched into evening and Lily's labor intensified. Her cries of pain cut through Vincent like a knife, and he felt helpless, useless, desperate to do something to ease her suffering. "Talk to her," Mrs. Patterson instructed during a brief lull. "Hold her hand, help her focus." Vincent entered the small bedroom, feeling like an intruder in this most intimate of moments. But when Lily saw him, her face flooded with relief, and she reached out for his hand. He took it, settling into the chair beside her bed, and she gripped his fingers with surprising strength. "I am scared," she whispered between contractions. "What if something goes wrong? What if the babies do not survive? What if I do not survive?" "You are going to be fine," Vincent said, trying to pour all his conviction into the words. "You are the strongest person I know, Lily. You have survived losing your husband, being alone, being bought at auction, all of it. You can survive this too, and I am right here. I am not going anywhere." Another contraction hit, and she cried out, her grip on his hand becoming almost painful. Vincent talked her through it, his voice steady even though his heart was racing. He told her stories about the ranch, about his childhood, about anything he could think of to distract her from the pain. Hours passed in this way, labor progressing with agonizing slowness. Finally, near midnight, Mrs. Patterson announced that it was time to push. Vincent started to leave, thinking he should give them privacy, but Lily's grip on his hand tightened. "Stay," she pleaded. "Please stay." So he stayed, holding her hand, supporting her shoulders when Mrs. Patterson instructed him to, wiping the sweat from her face with a cool cloth. He witnessed every moment of the raw, primal struggle of birth, and his respect for what women endured grew exponentially. The first baby, a girl, was born at midnight, her angry cries filling the small room. Mrs. Patterson worked efficiently, cleaning the infant and wrapping her in a blanket before handing her briefly to Lily. "One down, one to go," the older woman said. "The next should come faster." She was right. 20 minutes later, the second baby, a boy, made his entrance into the world with even louder cries than his sister. Mrs. Patterson handled him with practiced efficiency, and soon Lily was holding both babies, one in each arm, tears streaming down her exhausted face. Vincent stood back, feeling like he was intruding on something sacred. The babies were tiny and red-faced, with wisps of dark hair and impossibly small fingers that waved in the air. They were also unmistakably real, and the full weight of the responsibility he had taken on hit him like a physical blow. "You have a son and a daughter," Mrs. Patterson said to Lily with a warm smile. "Both healthy from what I can see. You did well, girl." Lily looked up at Vincent, her eyes shining with emotions he could not quite name. "Would you like to hold one of them?" His first instinct was to refuse, but something in her expression stopped him. He nodded and carefully took the baby boy from her arms. The infant was incredibly light, and Vincent held him awkwardly, terrified of dropping him or holding him wrong. But the baby settled against his chest, one tiny hand grasping Vincent's finger, and something shifted fundamentally in Vincent's heart. "Have you thought about names, Mrs. Patterson asked as she cleaned up. Lily looked down at her daughter. "For the girl, I would like to name her Rose after my mother. And for the boy," she hesitated, glancing at Vincent, "I was thinking James after Samuel's father, if that is all right." "Rose and James," Vincent repeated, looking down at the small boy in his arms. "Good strong names." Mrs. Patterson stayed for 3 more days, teaching Lily how to care for the twins and making sure there were no complications from the birth. Vincent found his neat, quiet life completely upended by the presence of 2 newborns. The house was never quiet anymore, with at least one baby crying at any given moment. Lily was exhausted, trying to feed both babies and recover from the difficult birth, and Vincent found himself doing tasks he had never imagined, like changing diapers and rocking crying infants in the middle of the night. One night, about a week after the birth, Vincent was walking the floor with James, who had been crying inconsolably for over an hour. Lily was in her room feeding Rose, and Vincent could hear her singing softly. James finally quieted, his small body relaxing against Vincent's shoulder, and Vincent looked down at the sleeping infant with a sense of wonder. He had bought Lily thinking he needed help with the ranch, but standing there in the lamplight with a baby sleeping on his shoulder, he realized the truth that had been growing in his heart for weeks. He had fallen in love with her. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly and steadily, like a river wearing away stone. He loved her strength, her kindness, her quiet humor. He loved the way she read aloud in the evenings, the way she hummed while cooking, the way she had trusted him even when she had every reason not to. And more than that, he realized she had needed love more than he had needed help. She had needed someone to see her not as property or a burden, but as a human being worthy of respect and care. He had given her that, perhaps without fully understanding what he was doing. And in return, she had given him something he had not known he was missing, a reason to come home each day, a purpose beyond mere survival. The next morning, exhausted from another mostly sleepless night, Vincent was repairing a broken step on the porch when he heard a horse approaching. Looking up, he saw Thomas Milligan riding toward the house, and his blood ran cold. He set down his tools and stood, placing himself between Milligan and the door. "Milligan," he said flatly. "What brings you out here?" The other man dismounted, his movements unsteady, and Vincent realized he had been drinking despite the early hour. "Heard you got yourself some babies now." "Twins, word is." "That is none of your business." "See, I think it is my business. I wanted that girl, and you stole her from me with your fancy bid. Been thinking about that a lot, and it does not sit right." Milligan swayed slightly. "Think maybe you owe me compensation." "I owe you nothing." "Now get off my property." "Or what? You going to make me?" Milligan's hand dropped to the gun at his hip. Vincent's own gun was inside, and he cursed himself for that foolishness. But before the situation could escalate, the door behind him opened, and he heard the distinctive click of a rifle being cocked. "I believe Vincent told you to leave," Lily's voice rang out, steady and clear. "And I am telling you the same. Get back on your horse and ride away, or I will shoot you for trespassing." Vincent glanced back and saw her standing in the doorway, his rifle braced against her shoulder with the ease of someone who knew how to use it. Despite having given birth just a week earlier, she looked fierce and determined, and Milligan's eyes widened with surprise. "You would not," he blustered. "Try me," Lily said coldly. "I have already lost one husband and nearly lost everything else. I will not lose this home or this man who has shown me more kindness than you could imagine. Now go." For a long moment, the tableau held, tension crackling in the air. Then Milligan spat on the ground and climbed back on his horse. "This is not over," he growled before riding off. Once he was out of sight, Lily lowered the rifle, and Vincent saw that her hands were shaking. He took the gun from her and guided her back inside, where she sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking as exhausted as she probably felt. "You should not have gotten out of bed," Vincent said, though his voice was full of admiration rather than censure. "And let him hurt you. Not a chance." She looked up at him. "Did you mean what you said that first day about this being my home?" "I meant every word." "Then I will defend it and you, just like you have defended me." Vincent knelt beside the sofa so they were at eye level. "Lily, I need to tell you something. These last 2 months have been the best of my life. Not because of the help you have given with the house or cooking, but because you are here. You and Rose and James, you have made this place feel like a home instead of just a house. I know the arrangement between us is supposed to be just business, but he paused, searching for the right words, I have come to care for you deeply. More than care for you, if I am being honest." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I wondered if I was the only one feeling it. Vincent, when you bought me that day, I thought my life was over. But you gave me something I did not even know I needed. You gave me safety, yes, and a home, but more than that, you gave me back my dignity. You made me feel like a person again, not just a burden or an object. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Vincent felt his heart soar at her words. "I know it has not been very long, and maybe people will say we are rushing things, but I do not care. Lily, I want to marry you properly, not as part of some work contract, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you, if you will have me." "Yes," she said without hesitation. 1,000 times yes." He leaned forward and kissed her gently, mindful of her recent ordeal, and she kissed him back with a tenderness that made his soul sing. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling, and from the bedroom, one of the babies began to cry, as if celebrating with them. The next few months passed in a blur of activity. Vincent rode into Sierra City to speak with the minister, and they arranged to be married in a simple ceremony at the church. Mrs. Patterson stood as witness, along with Frank Morrison and his wife, and Lily wore a new dress that Vincent had bought for her, pale blue with white lace, the first new dress she had owned in over a year. They held a small celebration at the ranch afterward, and for the first time in years, Vincent's house was filled with laughter and music and friends. Rose and James slept through most of it, content in the cradle that Vincent had built with his own hands, working late into the night to get it finished in time for their birth. As fall arrived and the weather began to cool, Lily fully recovered her strength. She proved to be everything Vincent could have hoped for in a partner, working alongside him when the babies allowed, managing the household with impressive efficiency, and bringing warmth and joy to every corner of his life. She learned to ride as he had promised, and on sunny afternoons, they would put the twins in a specially designed carrier and ride out together to check on the cattle or simply enjoy the beauty of the land. The twins grew rapidly, and Vincent found himself completely besotted with both of them. Rose had Lily's green eyes and a disposition that alternated between sweet and stubborn. James was quieter, more observant, with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Vincent had never imagined himself as a father, but he discovered that he loved it, loved teaching them things as they grew, loved watching them discover the world. One evening in late October, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset while the twins dozed in their cradle, Lily leaned her head against Vincent's shoulder. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Spending all that money on me, taking on the responsibility of a pregnant stranger." Vincent wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Not for a single moment. Best $35 I ever spent," she laughed. "Well, when you put it that way, I was quite the bargain." "You are priceless," he corrected seriously. "You and the children. You are everything I did not know I needed. I thought I was lonely before you came, but I did not even understand what loneliness truly was, because I had nothing to compare it to. Now I know what it is to have a full house and a full heart, and I would not trade it for anything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the colors shift across the sky. Then Lily spoke again. "I have been thinking about something. The 2-year contract, the one you signed when you bought me, it expires next year." "I know," Vincent said quietly. "I want you to tear it up. I do not want to be here because of a piece of paper. I want to be here because this is where I choose to be, because I love you and this life we are building together." Vincent pulled the document from his pocket. He had been carrying it with him for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "I had the same thought." He struck a match and held it to the corner of the paper, and they watched together as it burned, the ashes floating away on the evening breeze. "Now we are here only because we choose to be," Lily said softly. "Every day I choose you," Vincent replied, kissing the top of her head. The winter that followed was hard, as winters in the Sierra Nevada foothills could be. Snow fell heavily, and there were days when Vincent could barely make it out to the barn to feed the animals. But the house was warm, and with Lily beside him and the twins growing stronger every day, Vincent felt blessed beyond measure. Thomas Milligan made no more trouble. Word reached them through Frank Morrison that he had been arrested after drunkenly starting a fight in one of Sierra City's saloons and was serving time in the county jail. The news brought relief, one less worry in their increasingly busy lives. Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers covering the hillsides, and Lily announced that she was pregnant again. Vincent was overjoyed, though also anxious about her going through another difficult birth. But Mrs. Patterson assured them that second births were typically easier. And sure enough, when their son was born in early December of 1873, the delivery was much smoother than the twins' birth had been. They named him Samuel, after Lily's first husband, because, as she said, "He gave me those 2 precious babies, and I want his memory honored." Vincent had no objection. He was secure enough in Lily's love for him to honor the man who had come before, and little Samuel was a healthy, happy baby who rarely cried and seemed content with whatever was happening around him. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Vincent expanded his herd, built a new barn, and even hired a young man named Peter to help with the heavy work. The house echoed with the sounds of children playing, and Vincent and Lily added 2 more daughters to their family, Emily, born in 1875, and Clara in 1877. Rose grew into a spirited girl who loved horses, and could ride almost as well as her father by the time she was 8. James was quieter, preferring books to ranch work, and Vincent made sure to encourage his education, ordering books from San Francisco and teaching him mathematics and reading. Samuel was the peacemaker among the children, always trying to smooth over quirks and make everyone happy. Emily was adventurous and fearless, constantly climbing trees and exploring, while Clara was the baby, sweet and affectionate, always wanting to be held. Through it all, Vincent and Lily's love deepened and matured. They had their disagreements, as all couples do, but they faced them together, with honesty and respect. Vincent never forgot that day in Sierra City when he had impulsively bid $35 for a desperate pregnant woman. And Lily never forgot how he had treated her with dignity when she had expected the worst. One evening in the summer of 1880, they stood together on the porch as they had so many times before, watching the children play in the yard. Rose was teaching the younger ones how to rope a fence post, and their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Lily was expecting again, their 6th child, due in the fall. "Can you believe it has been 8 years?" Lily asked, her hand resting on her belly. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday," Vincent replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night? That I was safe and that you would not hurt me? I remember everything about that day. You kept your promise. You have given me more than safety. You have given me love, family, purpose, everything I thought I had lost forever." She turned in his arms to face him. "I was so broken when you found me, Vincent. I did not think I would ever feel whole again, but you did not just give me shelter. You helped me heal, helped me become myself again. That is what I needed most, even more than I needed help." Vincent kissed her softly. "And you gave me a reason to live instead of just surviving. You taught me what it means to have a family, to love and be loved. I went into that town thinking I needed a cook and a housekeeper, but what I really needed was you." As the sun set over the California hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they stood together surrounded by the sounds of their children's laughter, and Vincent knew that he had everything he could ever want. The lonely cowboy who had bought a desperate pregnant girl at auction had found something far more valuable than he could have ever imagined. He had found love, the kind that transforms and heals, the kind that builds a future out of broken pieces. In the years that followed, their family continued to grow and thrive. The 6th child, a son they named William, was born that fall. The ranch expanded further, becoming one of the most successful in the county. Rose eventually married a neighboring rancher's son, a good young man who reminded Vincent of himself. James went to college in San Francisco, studying law, though he came home every summer to help with the ranch work. The other children grew and flourished, each finding their own path in life. Vincent and Lily grew old together, their hair turning gray, their hands becoming weathered with age and work. But they never lost the connection that had formed in those early days, when a lonely cowboy had seen a desperate woman and decided to take a chance on kindness. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1898, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house that had once been so quiet and lonely was filled to bursting with family, 3 generations sharing food and stories and laughter. That evening, after everyone had gone home or retired to the guest rooms, Vincent and Lily sat together on the porch in the same spot where they had spent countless evenings over the years. They were both in their 50s now, their faces lined with age and experience, but when Vincent looked at his wife, he still saw the beautiful young woman who had stood on that auction platform with tears streaming down her face. "What are you thinking about?" Lily asked, noticing his expression. about how one decision changed everything. If I had not gone into town that day, if I had not bid on you, where would we be now? I try not to think about that, Lily said with a shudder. But I am grateful every day that you did. You saved my life, Vincent. No, he corrected gently. We saved each other. I was dying of loneliness out here, turning into a shell of a person. You brought me back to life just as much as I helped you. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the years. Do you think anyone else could understand it? How we fell in love? I do not know, and I do not care. All that matters is that we understand it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren laughing, and the sound filled Vincent with contentment. I love you, Lily said softly. I have loved you since those early days when you were so patient with me, so kind. But I love you even more now, after building this life together, after weathering every storm side by side. And I love you, Vincent replied, more than words could ever express. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily. You and our children and this life we have built. All of it started because I saw someone who needed love more than I needed help, and I am grateful every single day that I recognized that need. As they sat together under the stars, surrounded by the evidence of their love in the form of children and grandchildren sleeping safely in the house behind them, Vincent thought back to that young man who had ridden into Sierra City with $35 in his pocket and loneliness in his heart. He had made an impulsive decision that day, driven by compassion and a recognition of shared pain. That decision had given him everything. It had given him love, family, purpose, and joy beyond measure. It had transformed a house into a home, a lonely existence into a rich and full life. And it had proven that sometimes the things we need most are not the things we think we are looking for. The lonely cowboy had bought a girl carrying twins, thinking he needed help with his ranch. Instead, he had discovered that she needed love more than he needed help, and in giving her that love, he had found his own salvation. Together, they had built something beautiful and lasting, a legacy of love that would continue through their children and grandchildren for generations to come. As the night deepened, and the cool breeze carried the scent of sage and grass from the surrounding hills, Vincent and Lily sat hand in hand, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, and had created a love story that would endure through all the years of their lives and beyond. Their story had started with an auction in a dusty town square, with desperation and loneliness, and an act of compassion. But it had become something far greater, a testament to the power of love to heal, transform, and create beauty from brokenness. And as they finally rose to go inside, where their family waited, they knew that every moment of struggle, every hardship faced and overcome, had been worth it for this, for the life they had built together, for the love that had sustained them through it all. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through their children to future generations. But the true legacy Vincent and Ormond would leave behind was not land or cattle or property. It was the story of how a lonely cowboy and a desperate woman carrying twins had found each other at exactly the right moment, had recognized what each truly needed, and had built a love strong enough to weather any storm, a love that had created a family and a future neither could have imagined on that hot summer day in Sierra City when their lives had changed forever.